We've got a pretty one today. Welcome to TGS Outdoors, and we have this, the Arrieta Viscount 20 wood. Let's start with the stock and action. At the back, you have a skip checkered diamond heel pad. As you can see, it comes with some lovely field mud in there, which is quite a pleasant thing to have. The beauty of all side lock guns and side-by-sides where there's no stock bolt is you can have it truly finished in wood, and even then you can have plugged and holed ones. This one has no plugs and holes, which is quite nice. It means it's not being weighted or balanced or anything like that, and just checking the back of a gun. That said, a really good job you will struggle to see, so I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. The wood grade. You're never going to find extreme grades of wood on a standard Arrieta Viscount. But what you will find is pretty wood. And I think this wood has enough character. You're not looking at any striking differences across the grain, but it is nice. You know, it's got enough character without being inherently weak. Of course, with all guns, when you go and buy them, well, you can go and buy a new one with whatever wood you like. And if you luck out that somebody's selling one that they've upgraded the wood on, well, all the better. The checkering. The checkering is actually done in a flat point, semi-flat point, which is, I wouldn't say it's the best flat point in the world, but the beauty of flat point is that it is harder to do, obviously, than diamond point checkering. So it shows a slightly more higher skill of gunmaker, but at the same time does allow you to pick out any potential faults that may be there. So the thing with flat point checkering, as I said, it's harder. So what you get to see is the lack of uniformity in any work done. So it's kind of hard to judge anybody doing flat point, but the best of the best, because it is so hard. And most flat point that you'll find will be a much coarser lined set of checkers because it's harder then to see. When you have this huge array of smaller checkers or diamonds, you can see, well, all the little bits and bobs, which is interesting. I'm trying to decide whether somebody's refinished this stock or not, and it was flat point to start with, or whether someone sanded over the top, but some of the edge lines are still extremely sharp, so I think somebody has refinished this in the past actually, so I will take it back that it was probably a lot better than this when it started. There you go, I take it back. So I don't think this was ever that sharp around the edge. But hey, at least it's hand done. Sorry, I'm going to stop trying to pay too much attention to that. At least it is hand done, which puts it miles ahead of someone else. So this is at least hand done art as opposed to machine done art, which will give you a much, just gives a much better feel regardless, I think, than anything laser cut. So, moving on. On the trigger guard, which is elongated and let down the gun, you can see actually the tang to wood fit is really very well done. There's a couple of little bits down the end here, but they are kind of to be expected on any gun less than a best English gun, because well, every bit of hand finishing costs more money. You have a lovely little engraved wavy line, a nice little floral bouquet coming off of the screws, and it's interesting to note that the screws are exceptionally well engraved on this. They're not particularly, they're little sundials on both of these, little concentric circles, a little line around the outside. Absolutely beautiful. The little acanthus, that's not bouquet, the little acanthus scroll that comes off the top is coarse, but it is not badly done. It is hand cut, you can see all the graver lines. And again, I'd rather that than anything else, and it is actually really nicely done. And the more you pay attention, the better it gets, obviously. Moving on down here, you have, again, a nice little scroll pattern with two little wavy borders. You're not looking at anything too excessive here. And the chances are that it was roll-up etched and then it has been carved out. And in fact, there are portions of this side lock here that you can see are not hand done. Not that that is an issue, because guess what? It doesn't really make that much of a difference. As much as it would be nice to have it hand done, that obviously adds a huge amount to the cost, or detracts from the quality. So when it comes to hand engraving on any side-by-side, you have to call it either less area well done, more area badly done, or much more expensive. Obviously charging by the hour is kind of how it works. So if someone spends, let's say 2 weeks solid doing this beautiful job on this gun, well guess what, even if they are not that well paid, that's still a lot of money added to the gun by the time, especially there's added some input tax and profit on a few levels from manufacturer to distributor to retailer. Anyway, let's move on, sorry. On the side locks here, you have two large bouquets of floral engraving mixed with not that tight but nice scroll. It's when you get on the fences that it actually gets really nice, and again you are back to hand engraving, which is quite nice. And in fact the whole action body, the whole action bar is hand done, or at least hand finished from what I can see, other than the side locks that are not. So the side lock is a bar action side lock, so you have the spring up the front here, as is most common nowadays. They are nice, they are not particularly unique, and we're not going to go inside them today, but they will in another video. On the action fences here you have little 5 rose bouquets or 5 flower bouquets. It's nice to put together. You know, I could talk through every single detail on it, and it was quite worth mentioning that the safety catch is really very pretty. Not that excitingly done, but just the mixture of textures and the design of it is very pleasing to the eye. Very pleasing to the eye indeed. Anyway, moving on. The forend is fitted with Southgate ejector work, pretty standard, good, solid and robust, and is a push button forend. It's a good point to see the checkering. The checkering has been taken down on the stock, and you can always tell by looking at the forend here, because it's much more reasonable that people will abuse, take and work on their stocks, and those people will then leave their forend or do less work to a forend, which is interesting. The wood to metal fit, by the way, around the action bar is obviously top notch, and around the side lock is also top notch. In fact, some would say flawless. I would probably go with nearest down to perfect. On the forend iron, it is very similar, probably slightly less so, but you don't mind, it does add to robustness. You have, following on your forend tip, the same action, the same design of engraving that comes on your safety catch here, which is nice. Very nicely put together. Very nicely put together. It's a well thought out gun. You have a black forend iron, and all in all, a very pretty machine. Before we move on to the barrel, I didn't actually mention around the back of the stock here, you have 2 points, but no drop points, and what that actually gives you is they run the geometry into a semi-diamond grip. So you just have these slight raises here. Not true diamond grip, but semi-diamond grip. And that is just a lovely little attention to detail that you can pick up on, or you can leave. Again, it doesn't really matter, but it is pretty. So onto the barrels. They are a 28-inch barrel fitted with fixed chokes. And they're donated on the back here with 3 stars and 4 stars for quarter and half. And a little stamp made in Spain. You have all your proof marks, 1370 bar, and your serial number. And on the serial number on these, this is dated 2003. 70mm chambers. All quite exciting, really. I mean, that's exciting. It's just another shotgun barrel. The bluing quality is exceptional, and you have the beautiful concave rib set up with a tiny little bead sight on the end there. All in all, very nicely finished. At this point, I will also mention that the actions are, this one is a bright finished silver action, but they do make colour hardened versions as well. And yeah, well, just worth saying more than anything. When paying attention to the little details on this gun, you'll notice that actually the lumps, the loop, everything is really nicely finished. There's very few unfinished areas, and you have to look very hard to pick holes, unlike a modern sort of over and under where you can usually find holes and finish quite easy. The barrel finish is nice. There's a few areas of coarsety around the edges, but again, this is the difference between a very expensive gun and a more reasonably priced gun. You can pick one of these up for a couple of grand, or less than a couple of grand. You can pick one of these up for £1,000. You look in the right place and aren't worried about condition or spec. They are very nicely put together, and actually the metal finish, the hand polishing time that goes into these is really nice. There's no rounded edges, there's no lack of quality of workmanship. And again, it's just nice to mention these things because it is actually quite important. As with most 24 side locks, the actual weight distribution is all in the middle. Very lightweight barrels and a very slimline lightweight stock do sort of allow for a very centre heavy gun, which does work for handling, obviously. These guns are famed to pattern very well, same as most things. They do at least point in the right direction. There's nothing wrong with this gun whatsoever. Yeah, so there are some simpler points if you look here, and perhaps the checkering hasn't been spent 10 years over, and yes, perhaps certain engraving areas are not hand done, but only hand finished. Who cares? The design of the whole thing is not unobtrusive and has you staring at it loving little touches that just go all hand in hand. And you do have these little interconnecting features on the gun that just keep the designs flowing throughout, and that is a really nice thing, and a sign of a good maker, or a good designer at least. And as I've said, all the signs of a good maker are there, if not perhaps that finish quality that you may desire, but you know, don't want to spend 15 or 20 grand on. Stock dimensions sit at 1 3/8 and 2 1/4. And the cast wise, it doesn't really have a great deal. It doesn't have a great deal at all. In fact, the cut is fairly straight and the toe holds most of the cast. But it comes up quite nicely for what it is. Trigger pulls on this are obviously crisp and decent. It's a side lock, for goodness sake. It's rare to find one with truly awful triggers. They sit at about £4, 4.5, which is not bad at all. And they do break very nicely indeed. Furthermore to that, the actual shape of them is quite pleasing. There's no particular sharp edges or horror there, though one may find that if you have slightly smaller hands, it is a little bit tight to get to that front trigger. There's quite a large gap between front and rear trigger. On which note, that front trigger there is a spring front trigger, which is nice, which would actually allow for a larger hole there, but it is obviously designed for gloves, which is no bad thing at all. A very nicely thought out gun with some amazing features, I think you'll agree. I have mentioned price quite a few times during this, and so you can pick up a scrabby Arrieta Viscount for about £1,000, like I said. In reality, you're going to be looking more in that £1,600, £1,700 mark for something starting to be decent, and up and around £2 and a bit grand for something that is actually alright. Think 10 years ago now, these new were just over £2,500 with a very average spec. So most people would have bought slightly nicer ones, and most of the ones stocked on the shelves were slightly higher spec than standard. There are obviously other models of this, crowns, number ones, and vary in quality massively. But this is just this, and I thought I'd share it because I do think, in terms of value for money, workhorse value for money with looks on top, these guys are kind of beautiful, and it is pretty, and hopefully put a smile on your face like it did mine. I like it. I like it a lot, but then I am biased because, well, am I biased? I'm not really biased at all. It's just pretty and affordable and solid and modernish, and that is a good combination of things. Would I prefer an English gun? Yeah, probably would, but you know, it's 10 times the price, and I don't think you're getting 10 times less of the gun or a tenth of the gun. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Take care, goodbye, and we'll see you next time.